I'm Josh Fenton, CEO and co-founder. A little news to get started. Johnson & Johnson's one-shot vaccine has been given emergency use authorization by the FDA this morning. This is going to allow states across the country to dramatically increase the amount of vaccine that they're going to be able to start administrating. Also, if you haven't seen it, there's a major feature in Go Local this morning about maybe the most accomplished family in Rhode Island, the Wiley family. Take a look at it. It touches everywhere from the first black judge in the state of Rhode Island to one of the leading candidates for mayor of New York in this year's election. So a wildly intriguing story about all the different members of the family and all the impacts they've made, not only here in Rhode Island, but across the country. Let's go to our friends at Mott & Chase. We've got Kimberly Marion on today. She is sort of a guru of all guru agents, has worked across the state and helped happy homeowners find their dream house. Welcome. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Thanks so much for inviting me today.
Yeah, we're excited. We had Nelson Taylor on last week, and he was great, talking about all the challenges of trying to buy a nice house on the east side. But you've got a little different spin to it this week. You've got kind of the 5 tips to be able to find your dream house during a period of time in which there are no houses available functionally. Right. Walk us through that. Well, let's go with number 1. I'm intrigued about this.
Good. I hope so. I can't give away all my secrets, but I'm gonna go with these top 5, and maybe if you let me squeak a few bonus ones in, I will. Number 1 is going to be pretty obvious, I think, and that is in this market when there are so many buyers and so few houses, get yourself connected to a great realtor. There are so many good realtors in our community, and part of that is for negotiation tips, but also what you see on Zillow and some of the other sites. They're not updated as frequently, so you may be having house lust and really be excited about a property, and you call your agent, it's already under contract, and that's a challenge. It takes the wind out of your sails. So if you're working with a great agent, not only can they have instant access to the MLS, which they can share with you, they can also share with you any pocket listings or what we call non-MLS listings that aren't posted that you may never hear about if you're only searching on your own. So many reasons to have a great realtor working with you, but those are some of my top reasons.
Yeah, and it could work the opposite way, right? Zillow will say it's not on the market, but in fact, because of the time delay, that property might actually be on the market.
That's exactly right. So your best connection, and we have a specific tool called Real Scout that's very helpful, and it's connected to the MLS. So we connect all of our agents, all of our buyers that are looking for houses to Real Scout. So when they're looking, they're able to find real time. And if they want to search the other sites, that's fine. And then they can come back and use the site that we have that is real time. So they don't kind of get tricked into thinking they have something available then that isn't available.
And MLS, of course, is a multiple listing service run by the Realtors Association across the country. It's a huge, massive database that really has virtually every house that's available.
Yes, thanks for having my back on that one. I appreciate it.
Who the heck would even know that acronym? All right, number 2.
What happens? The lingo.
What's number 2?
Number 2 is kind of obvious, but get pre-approved, and there are a couple of caveats with this. Get pre-approved, and don't think that you have a pre-approval because you had one in October. They typically can last 30 days. Sometimes, that's a variable, but have a current pre-approval, and please, please, please do your agent and yourself a favor and talk to your real estate agent about who a great local lender is. I'm not saying you can't do well on your own, but I can almost guarantee you will do better with a local lender that your agent has vetted and knows really well. I can call or text one of the people that I work with and in a minute have an answer back. These, the site's online, they'll give you a quick answer, but when it comes to closing table, sometimes there are problems with those sites. So approach every listing as though it's the one you're going to fall in love with. You have your realtor working on your team. You have a local lender ready to back you up with whatever you need at a moment's notice. And it's so important. Josh, houses are going under contract in an hour, 2 hours, 2 days, not 2 weeks, not in this market.
So listen, We're on the east side. Down the street, there's a 3 condominium unit, and one of the units got posted. It was gone, I don't know, 5 days later, gone, under contract, pending, and I think it's closed. I saw a moving truck there this morning. Yeah. So it's not like anything any of us have ever dealt with before.
Right, right. It's imperative that you have that updated pre-approval ready to go. Use somebody local. If you've gotten one from an online site, I really would suggest that you talk to your agent and get somebody local working as a team for you. Well, sometimes sellers agents will call the lender to make sure that the buyer that they're interested in working with is a really solid buyer, and you want that to be someone that's going to pick up the phone and support you when you need it. So get yourself a great local lender.
And if you haven't bought a house in the last 6 or 7 years, all the rules are different. I mean, I hadn't bought a house for 20 years, and sold that house, went to buy another house. The amount of due diligence since the Great Recession is crazy. I mean, I felt them pulling hair follicles out to do DNA testing. The amount of it used to be you turned over your taxes, your taxes and your bank statements, and you show that you were employed. You were good to go 20 years ago. Now it's they put the white light in your eyes. They're checking. They are checking every darn thing. I had a credit problem from a location that I hadn't lived in 30 years. Okay, wow. So crazy. So let's go to number 3. I'm excited about.
Negotiate. It's not, negotiate terms. So think about negotiation. Everything you do in life is a negotiation. So when you think about the house, you're thinking, okay, we need the highest and best price, and we need to get that in now. And how high over asking is this house going to go? And they are going. Many and most are going over asking. But I'd like to suggest that you think about a few other things and talk about them with your realtor. They'll have suggestions even in addition to what I'm going to suggest, I'm sure. But think about the inspection. Do you want to waive the inspection? I don't generally suggest that, but I do suggest an inspection for your information only. And that would mean that if a seller sees for buyer's information only on the inspection, they know that you're saying, we may find something wrong with the house, but unless it's a massive safety issue, we aren't going to ask you to fix it. So that's a relief to sellers to know that, okay, this buyer is saying they're not going to try to have us nitpick every little broken, damaged thing. And there always are things. Inspectors, they really look for fixes. They look for things that are wrong with the house. If it's available to you and you have funds, you could forego the appraisal contingency, and that's not something, again, that I always suggest, but for some people in this market, if they have extra money put aside and they really want the house, again, this is something to talk to your lender and your realtor about. You can say, we're going to forego the appraisal, and if it comes in, if the house is on for $350 and the appraisal comes in at $320 and we offered $350, we're going to pay that difference in cash. So that's something to think about, and if you can do it, that's attractive to sellers. Think about maybe the stuff that people accumulate. Maybe you can put in an offer that says, well, whatever you're going to take, and if you, for your convenience, leave some things behind and we'll clean the house out. So the worst part of moving is getting all that stuff into the truck and cleaning, and what do you do with the things you no longer want? So that's another tactic. You could say, take all the things that you want, we'll clean out the house. Mixing some of these together is a good thing. And another thing that people don't really think about is the earnest deposit, which is the deposit you send when you submit your offer. Frequently it's $500 or $1,000, depending on the property. You can consider putting in a much larger earnest deposit. That could put you at a little bit more risk, but you do have an agent protecting you, and you do have a 10 working day inspection period when you sign that purchase and sale agreement. So if you say, I'm going to put in a $20,000 earnest deposit, that really tells the seller that you are highly interested, you're putting down a large deposit, and you really want the house.
Kimberly, let me ask you a question about inspections, because it's always been kind of a critical element in making the buying decision. You know, you make the offer, you're starting to move towards the purchase and sale, you hire the home buyer goes in and needs to hire an inspector, and they always flag stuff, right? It never comes back perfect, especially in older housing stocks like we have here in New England. And some of the things are minor, this, that, and the other, but some of them can be significant, and it's not always easy to determine what the total cost of the fix or the cleanup is going to be. You know, Nelson talked about it last week about so many people are bypassing the inspection requirement in order to buy the house. But we're talking about things that could be $10,000 or $50,000 or even more significant.
Right. That's a great question. And when I work with clients, we look at the sales disclosures, which is all the information about the house that the seller can share with you. You think about the big things, the roof, the foundation, the mechanicals. There's some, you know, is anything leaking, broken? Are the mechanicals 30 years old? You know, you're going to be buying a new, well, by mechanicals, I mean, you know, the furnace, the air conditioning, that kind of thing. I generally try to lead people to have an inspection unless the house is just clearly in fabulous condition based on looking at it, based on the sales disclosures. I like to have people have an inspection for buyer's information only because it's such a huge investment. The $500 for the inspection is a small concession to make sure that everything's in good shape. But people do, they forego the inspection entirely, and that would be based on the sales disclosures and walking through and really looking at the house. I mean, if you're working with an agent that's seasoned, they have seen so much. They've seen asbestos, they've seen, you know, furnaces that are falling apart, and AC that doesn't sound right, and then roofs, stains in the ceiling. There are a lot of giveaways that can tell you what you might be in for, but I almost always say, let's have the inspection for buyer's information only.
Yeah, I think that's a critical.
There's a lot that can come up.
I think that's a critical point. Now, let's go to number 4. Tell us about number 4.
So, don't make a bad decision. Here's what's happening. You're calling me, if you're my client, you're calling me and you're saying, Kim, I love this house. It's around the corner. It's on Tabor Ave. It's everything I want. And I'm scrambling to get us in because a lot of times it actually can be challenging to get the appointment to get you in. We go see it. We have 15 minutes with a mask, a line of people outside waiting, and an agent that's, you know, I'm doing his or her job walking us through and trying to share what they can. But you're talking about 15 minutes and hundreds of thousands of dollars. So, and even millions, and you're going to make a decision in 15 minutes. So what I tell my clients is, and I told them this in a slow market but especially now, drive by the house in the morning, drive by the house at night. If you can park around the corner for a little bit, you could be surprised by the traffic noise. Is there a neighbor with a dog that's barking? If that's the kind of thing that bothers you, you want to know about it. See what the traffic is like, see where the sun sets, although I usually use a compass to kind of help people out with that on walkthroughs, but really see what you can do to find out about the house before you make the offer so that you have a good sense of what you're doing. I mean, think about spending $500,000 on a house you literally spent 15 minutes in. It's pretty stressful. It's pretty stressful.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And were you mentioning the dogs barking because I have 2 dogs that are always barking in our windows? I think that was a little cheap shot at Bear and Goose, and I'm going to let them know about it. Don't be walking down Arlington. They'll be barking at you. What's the next tip?
The next tip is stay true to your limits. So it's really easy to get caught up in this moment that we're in right now. And remember that this is a moment we're in right now. And if you really have to buy or you really want to buy, we can help you. A great agent is going to help you buy. It may take 7 offers. So know that going in, sort of hang on to your sense of your emotional urgency going in. And as much as you get excited, and this is my dream house, I have to have it, try really hard to keep in mind that this is a moment. And while it might be the dream house, another house is going to come on, and another house could end up being a better house or a really great house. And so try not to get caught up in overspending, because as much as interest rates are at a historic low and the money that you likely will be spending over what you expected this year and maybe even into next year, at least interest rates are so low that you're borrowing. There's a balance in the cost of borrowing and what you might overspend. But try not to put yourself in a position where you're going against people and you're going above what you really want to spend, because there's nothing worse than being in the house that you love and barely being able to afford it and having your life become more difficult.
Yeah,
So,
Kim, I think that's a critical, there's such a fervor right now of everyone chasing these houses. There's so few, there's very little inventory. Prices are going up. And great, it's wonderful today, both members of the couple are working, but if one goes sideways and loses their position, and
right.
if we listen to the head of the Fed, we might be looking at 10% unemployment in the near future. You don't want to be in a situation where, not only are you house poor because you overpaid for it, but any distress in your family then puts you sideways and you're in big trouble.
Right. And there are things you want to do. You want to have a great life. You want to travel. You maybe you have hobbies. Those are the things that make life worth living. And it's so important to do those things. So making sure that you buy the house that you love, not just because you couldn't get anything else, and that it's affordable. And I do have one more tip. I think that may have been 5, but
no, that was 4. This is 5.
Okay, number 5, and this is something I do all the time on behalf of my clients, and I ask them to also do, and that is Google or search the seller of the property that you're really interested in buying. And I'm not saying to be creepy. I'm saying Google them to see. Rhode Island is small. The world is small. I'm working with clients from Australia right now. They call me on FaceTime. It's like, they could be next door. The world is small, but Rhode Island, everyone watching knows Rhode Island is so small. You may have a connection with those folks that you don't even know about. So if you take a second and you Google them and you internet sort of screen them, you may find that you have someone in common or something in common, and that may be worth mentioning to your realtor and somehow sharing that with the seller. Because I just heard a story yesterday. I was in the office, and one of my cooperative agents here at Sotheby's was saying, you cannot believe what happened. That I had a listing, and they took a $20,000 offer less than the other cash offer that they had, and they did that because the buyer was a veteran and they were also veterans, and they remembered being young and starting their family, and they felt like more important to me as a seller is this relationship and this opportunity in this crazy market that I can share with this buyer. And that buyer got the house. And if there hadn't been a little bit of background searching, that might have been missed, and that house would not have gone to them. There are so many reasons people make decisions about properties that are emotional. Just like we're going in with buyers and our buyers are so emotional, sellers are equally emotional about their property. And they've had a lifetime there and they have a history there, and that factors into what they value about the house and the property and how they're going to value the buyer. So if there's a way, and you can talk to your realtor about it, because there are a few ways to handle that. If you find something where there's synergy between you and the seller, I say definitely try to connect and share that to see if it can help you get your dream house.
Well, and if you've lived in a house for a long period of time, you have an emotional bond to it. As you're moving out and selling it, you want it to go to a nice family, somebody who's going to take care of it, that you can connect to, that you'll feel good about when you drive past it in the future. So I think that's a great point, and one that really doesn't get shared very often. Kim, what's the biggest danger right now? Just last question. What's the biggest danger for folks who feel like, oh, I've got to buy a house right now. We've got to move. We're moving into the market, or we've got another child on the way, or whatever it is. But there's this sort of sense of panic that I need to get a house. What's the biggest danger for those folks?
I feel like the biggest danger is that overspending that I mentioned. It's really important to think about not the moment that we're in, because in a couple of years, you may be able to buy a house. If you can hang in, you may be able to buy a house for a more balanced purchase price. Now, interest rates might come up, so it could balance out. But, and also just the emotional heartbreak. And I had clients, they were in really in a search for a property. We put in 7 offers, and they were at more than once. They said, I just can't do this anymore. This is so depressing. I mean, I feel like we get so excited, and then we get there and there are a million people and our offer just falls to the bottom. So that emotional drain on top of everything else we're kind of going through with being trapped with COVID, it can be a little depressing. So, I mean, if I had an extra tip, it would be prepare yourself for an emotional journey and try not to overspend reasonably, and try to get yourself in the mindset that, you know, your realtor's working with you, you have a great lender, you're doing all you can, and it really might take 6 or 7 tries. So be ready for that.
And in the interim, there's always living in that van down by the river, according to Chris Farley.
I share this cute little mini RV that I can link to people. Just kidding. Yeah.
Listen, Kim, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. Love this partnership with you guys and getting the best tips in an incredibly hot real estate market. Last month, the prices were up only 7.5% statewide for single-family homes. And on the east side of Providence, there was only 13 transactions in January, but the median price was $865,000. It is a crazy market.
It is.
Thank you so much. For everybody else, stay tuned. 1:30, we'll have Dr. Michael Fine on. We'll be talking about a lot of things, including Johnson & Johnson's approval by the FDA, what that rollout means to supply, how long it will take to get out into folks' arms, and also the mega merger between Lifespan and Care New England. Can it get through federal regulatory approval with the Federal Trade Commission? So we'll talk about all of those things this afternoon. Everybody, stay safe. Please wear your mask.